Good morning, Chuck here with No Time to Be Hungry. Today we're going to do something a little different. It's not Thai food, it's not a Thai restaurant, but it's something like learning how to make fire. But learning how to make bread. So I want to show you guys, making bread is like extremely easy to do. It's mostly just technique, a lot of practice, but there's a lot of different ingredients on the internet on how to make bread, and sometimes it gets real confusing when you make bread step by step, by procedure and the exact ingredient, it usually never works out. So I'm going to show you guys how I make bread. It's an easy artistic way to create some delicious masterpiece. These are the basic ingredients that you need. You need 1 bowl, sugar, a little bit of salt, a 1/4 cup of melted butter, some bread flour, some yeast, 1 egg, and some warm water. I'm going to put the ingredients down below that I used today, but you can change up the ingredients however you want depending on what kind of bread you want and depending on how much bread you want to make. So I'm just going to show you the basic ingredients and how to make it feel and how to create the perfect texture dough to make your bread masterpiece. Okay, let's get started. First thing we're gonna do is we're gonna activate our yeast. So I'm gonna get some hot water here, about a 1/4 cup of water. And then I don't want it so boiling hot because we don't want to kill the yeast. So I'm gonna add some cold water to it. Right now I've got, let's see, about 3/4 cup of water. Okay, so now I'm going to add my yeast. Now I put my yeast, I put it in a coffee jar actually, but I put it in the refrigerator to keep it cool and keep it fresh, and so it'll last a long time. So I'm going to use about a tablespoon of yeast, and then I'm going to feed it a little bit of sugar. Now what I'm doing right now is called activating the yeast, and it's not really necessary, but I want to make sure my yeast is alive, so this effort isn't a waste of time and my dough never rises. Let me show you what it looks like when the yeast is activated, because really the yeast is the most important ingredients in making this type of bread. And there it is right there, nice and fluffy. It's going to actually smell like yeast, and that's it. We know it's alive and kicking. So that's after sitting for just a few minutes. Okay, what I'd like to do first is I like to add I like to start out with my wet ingredients. So I'm putting in my 3/4 cup of water with yeast. Right here I've got a 1/4 cup of melted butter. You can use oil if you want to, but this type of bread, I like to use butter. Sometimes instead of sugar, I like to use honey, or whatever you like, or you don't have to use sugar at all. If you're making French bread or garlic bread, you really don't use any sugar for that. But for this recipe, we're using a 1/4 cup of real butter because butter tastes great. Okay, put in our butter, and we have 1 egg. 1 egg, there we go. So let's get that all mixed up. Incorporated. Okay, now I'm going to start out with my sugar. Maybe. Now this is going to be, oh, this thing is so tight. We have ants, so I got to make sure that everything is sealed up tight. Oh my God, really? Paige dressed up like an Eskimo. At least your hat matches. Are you cold? Yeah. What's the temperature now? It's 10 degrees
10.
Celsius. 10 degrees Celsius.
10. 10.
All right, let's add our sugar. I'm going to use a 1/4 cup of sugar. Why? Because sugar makes everything taste good too. This recipe is sweet butter bread. Sweet, sugar, sweet, inside. There we go. Give it a mix. If cup's not what you use, then just Google the 1/4 cup. Mix that all up or incorporate it. Now I'm going to start out with about 1.5 cups of, we're going to use about 3 cups in total. It just really depends on the texture of the dough, whether I'm going to have to add some or not. But I always start out with my wet first so that I can get it just right. Now this is going to be loaf bread, so I want the dough to be a little bit firm. If I'm using some kind of soft dinner rolls or something, it'll be just tacky enough to barely stick to my hand. But this is going to be a little firm because I want it to be a nice shaped loaf. Okay, so I'm going to start out with 1.5 cups of flour. Now this is just regular bread flour. That's 1. So let's mix this all up so it's nice and incorporated. Mẹ Tim, it's fixing to be lunchtime, so they got all of their vegetables, and I'll be out of the kitchen in แป๊บนึง10 นาที พอ okay เสร็จแล้ว okay
จ้าตามสบาย
okay
แกงเทียบเป็นไร
I gotta make sure I'm out of their way
โอ้ตายกำลัง
That's about 1.5 cups. I think another 1.5 cups will probably make it perfect. So I want to make sure everything is stirred in good. Now, one thing I didn't put in yet, and the reason why is because this is where some people make a mistake, is the salt really kind of brings out the flavor and everything. But if you add salt on top of the yeast, a lot of times the salt will kill it and your bread will never rise. So try to put the salt on after you've put, either if you want to do your dry ingredients first, you can. Then you can mix this in with the flour and it won't be affected so much. But if you're using any kind of like a garlic salt or regular, make sure you don't put it on top of your yeast. So anyway, I'm going to add a pinch of salt while it's still wet. I bought all these things in the kitchen when I first moved to Thailand. I made a video, I'll share it with you up here. It's about our home, but because we needed more cabinet space, and I even bought another refrigerator, and my mother-in-law says, we don't need another one, but I put it upstairs and this one's full all the time. But I feel like I need more cabinet space all the time. But anyway, this is what I've got here to mix my dough. I don't have a stand mixer. I don't make that much bread, I think, to buy one. They're a little pricey here in Thailand. I had a really nice one back in the States, but this is what I got. Now, you don't have to have this. You can do it by hand. I'm not going to show you how to knead bread by hand, but if that's your option, you can Google how to knead bread by hand, and you can watch probably 1,000 videos on doing that. But this is what we're going to use today. It came with 2 different sets of paddles. And I actually bought this on Lazada.com here, and they don't have Amazon in Thailand, so we use Lazada. We're gonna do this for about maybe 10 to 15 minutes. And I'm just gonna add flour to it as we go, add 1/2 cup each time. This could be messy, so make sure your mixer's not on high. And I just kind of push it into it so I can gradually get it going. So let me do this. I'll tell you how much flour I have used, and I think it's going to be about 3 cups. So this is about 2.5 cups here. It's still, see how it's sticking on the bottom of the pan there? I don't want that. It's still too it's still too wet. This is what I'm looking for, to not stick on the bottom and be kind of firm. Okay, this is what I'm looking for right here. Now this is pretty firm. It's not sticking to my hands at all. And this is gonna be easy to form any kind of like a fancy not dinner roll or a loaf bread. And this is it right here. This is my baby. Okay, I want you to grow. Okay, so now I'm gonna put it back in this bowl right here. A friend of mine who is probably watching this video, maybe she can make bread pretty good too, it lives in Texas. She also has a YouTube channel. If you guys want to know some marketing skills or how to rent houses and what it takes to rent houses, she has an awesome video about that and really smart with making money. But she showed me about this shower cap thing. We were at her house one time and I said, hey, do you have any saran wrap? She hands me a shower cap and I'm like, okay. Do you have any saran wrap? She said she just put this over the bowl and I was like, that's an amazing idea. Why didn't I ever think about that? So anyway, shower cap. My bowl's a little too big though, so I might have to stretch it out a little bit. But you can get these on the internet. But every time we travel, I always save it from the from the hotel. Okay, once it's sealed up, now of course you can use saran wrap. You don't have to steal anybody's shower cap, but just make sure it's covered and put it in a nice warm place for roughly about an hour till it doubles in size. Now, if you're not in a warm place, normally making bread is like super easy in Thailand because it's humidity and it's warmth. I'm gonna stick it in the oven with a hot glass of water to keep it moist inside. A lot of times you want to make sure this stays wet. A lot of people will coat it in oil to make sure that it doesn't start to, because if it gets like a dry coating on the outside, it won't expand, and that just doesn't work. So a lot of people coat it with oil. But I used to do that all the time, but I found out that it was difficult to roll it out once I've taken it out. So I just do this and make sure my place that I keep it in is warm and moist, and it usually has no chance to dry out. Got a hot glass of water right here. I'm just gonna stick that on the bottom, put my pan in there, and I'm gonna close that thing and let it sit there for a couple of, maybe an hour to 2 hours. I'll check on it here in about 45 minutes. Okay, it's actually been about an hour and a half. I had to wait till the coast was clear and the ladies left and it was safe to come in here. Now, I'll tell you this, sometimes, well, a couple of times I had forgotten about my bread and it rose too much that it didn't really turn, it was just so aerated and too much, and I don't know, I guess the yeast just grew too big and it never turned out right. So you don't want to forget about it 4 hours later and go, it may or may not work. But anyway, it's been an hour and a half. Let's check. Well, it looks pretty good. It has doubled in size. Actually, because it's so cool, it didn't really get as big as I thought it would, but it's perfect right now. Look at that. That is amazing beauty right there, isn't it? So we do want to get all of the air out of it. We want to smash it back down and get the air out of it so we can roll our bread. I did wash my hands. Okay, now I want to make these into little try to make it as even as possible. The thing about making homemade bread is it never really looks exactly perfect. That's why it's homemade bread, but it always tastes better than the perfect stuff you could buy at the store. I want to get like 6 pieces. If possible. Make it into a little ball of some sort. What I want to do now is just kind of roll this out into a square if possible. Get all of the air out of it. And once I've done that, I'm going to roll it into my shape. Pretty tight. And now I want to fold I don't want any of the folds to be exposed, because when it rises, it'll make it look kind of funny, but it'll still taste good. Funny still tastes good. So take it and try to get the creases interlocked together as best as you can. We want to make sure the fold stays on the bottom. Try to get it like directly on the bottom, and then get your shape. And then we'll put this on a piece of paper here in just a second. I have a big rolling pin, but I like the small one. For whatever reason, I like it better. The one I have is like a Teflon, the bigger one. Page checking on me. Okay, now I'm going to take some parchment paper, put the bread down on it. I'm just going to use 3 because it's going to get full. It's going to expand quite a bit. And then that didn't really work out, did it? Yeah, make sure they're kind of even and in a nice spot for it to grow. And then I'm going to stick it back in the warm spot. And hopefully it looks perfect when it's done. I got flour. You should see my camera. I got flour all over it. One more little hint. If the bread seems to dry out a little bit in this process of putting it in into the oven, just take some water or something and just kind of moisten it back up, so you don't get like a little dry coat on it. And it should be fine. Okay, well, let's leave it in the oven, let it rise again, maybe about 1.5 hours this time, because it's a little cool. So normally when it's hot, it takes like 30-40 minutes and it's already risen. So we'll forget about it for 1.5 hours. This recipe takes a lot of patience, but it's good for you sometimes. Well, my buns have risen. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a razor blade, and because my dough is nice and firm, I'm gonna slice into it. Now, if your dough is really soft and you cut into it, it's gonna go like an inner tube, like you're cutting into an inner tube. So, you know, if your dough is just right for this type of bread, you should be able to cut into it, and no problem. Now, I have a small oven because I live in Thailand, and sometimes the voltage is not real good. So a lot of times I could have it on max and it'll cook like it's on maybe 200 degrees Celsius. So right now I have it on about 250 degrees Celsius. I have to put my rack on the very bottom so that my bottom gets cooked. it's just the way I have to do it here in Thailand. So depending on your oven, just watch it. You want it to be a nice little golden brown on top, and make sure that the bottom is cooked, and you'll be good to go. Don't overthink it. If you like your bread crispy, like the crust crispy, you can take some water and just brush, or if you have a sprayer, you could spray it down, and the water will help make the top crust crispier if you like it that way. If you like it soft like I do, just leave it alone. Or you can also take some egg wash, take an egg, mix it up, a little milk or whatever, or just the egg, and brush that on there, and it'll make it shiny. But this is how we're doing this today. There's a lot of things you can do, but really just learn how to make the basic bread first, and then you can go all kind of different directions later. Okay, let's get it out of the oven and see how it looks. Wow. Okay, I know the bread smells good, and there's nothing better than warm bread with butter or jelly or whatever you like, but if you let it cool off, it stays really, really soft on the inside. The outer crust cools just a little bit, and it'll stay moist. If you cut into it right away, it might be a little hard. Maybe you like it that way. Maybe you're not going to give it enough time to be hard. Maybe you're going to just eat the whole thing right now. But either way, I think she's going to do that. That's it. Wonderful bread. So we're going to crack one of these open right now and try it anyway while it's warm. That looks crazy good. You want to try a piece? Okay, come over here and you can try it. You want butter or just like it is? Try it just like it is first. Awesome bread. Very good. Tastes okay? I hope you enjoyed this episode of No Time to Be Hungry. If you liked my baking skills, give me a thumbs up. If you want to see other baking stuff in the future, let me know down in the description box. Also, if you want to see some other Thai dishes, leave a comment down below. I can't promise you it'll be on the next video, but I do write it down. And if it's something that we've already done, I'll try to share the link with you. But anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you guys on the next video of No Time to Be Hungry. Bye. That's aggravate Mafia. She doesn't really eat too much falafel because it's too filling. It's warm. อร่อย อร่อย โอเคครับ